gives you a closer look at the events that happened around Maine this week.
Good morning. Thanks for joining us. I'm your host, Cindy Campbell. Apple Hill Stables in Levant is once again hosting an outdoor rodeo to benefit a local charity. I caught up to Larry Frost from Apple Hill Stables this week and asked him about next month's event. So Larry, you have a rodeo coming up. How many years have you been doing this?
This will be our third annual.
Wow. And am I remembering correctly that every year you pick a charity that benefits from the rodeo?
Yes, and this is our second year with the Anah Shrine.
Okay. What made you decide on the Anah Shrine?
Great group of people. They've been limited because of the past COVID issues. They haven't had the opportunity to hold their circus and different events like that. So we're an outdoor venue, and we thought we'd just try to see if we can help them out.
That's wonderful.
Pretty good time. And the crowd is growing, it's awesome.
And this is a professional rodeo, right? I think when people think, oh, there's a rodeo in Levant, it's someone's backyard rodeo. But this is a professional rodeo, correct?
Yes, it's a sanctioned PRCA event, and it's actually 3 rodeos. So the contestants that compete Friday night, Saturday night, and Sunday all get 3 rodeos in their circuit. Count for 3 rodeos in their circuit.
And what kinds of things do they do? Do they do barrel riding? Do they do bull riding? What are some of the events that they have?
It's bull riding, bronc riding, bareback bronc riding, roping. The WPRA is a women's professional rodeo, barrel racing, and they do barrel racing. So there's tie down that the women do also. So there's a lot of events go on.
Okay. Are there any categories where local people can get involved?
Saturday morning, there's a group of girls. Okay. They're going to hold at 9 a.m. a local non-pro barrel racing event. So the people or contestants that are with PRCA, they earn a card through earnings and participation in different rodeos across the United States. So they're considered professional rodeo people compared to non-pro.
Okay. And for anyone local who's interested in taking part in that, how do they get signed up?
You can contact Robin on Facebook or check out Apple Hill Stables on Facebook.
Tell us again, when and where is this happening?
This is going to be Friday at 7 p.m. September 10th, and Saturday 7 p.m. September 11th, and Sunday 2 p.m. September 12th. So each day the gates usually open at 2 hours ahead. So Friday night, for instance, they'd open at 5 and so forth. But Saturday, because these girls are doing this barrel racing event, they're going to be here at 9. So the place is going to be busy all day. And then we are fortunate enough to have an inspirational speaker, Amber Lee Snyder, coming in from Utah. And she is a young gal who was involved in an automobile accident as a barrel racer and became injured and in a wheelchair. So she's going to come here as an inspirational speaker, which she's taught herself to get back on the horse out of the wheelchair and strap herself in and continues to race competitively.
Wow, that's great.
So she's going to speak at 1, and then we have kind of a ceremonial event for first responders and the military and folks like that at 5 before the rodeo starts.
Okay. So this is benefiting the Anah Shrine. Will any of the Anah Shrine organizations be there?
Oh, all kinds of them. There's clowns, Keystone Cops. They're helping with the concessions and parking and security. There's tons of them around.
Awesome. You can't keep those clowns down, man. They're going to be there.
They are something. They're a treat to be with. Yeah, and each one of these days before the rodeo starts, when the gates open, the public's welcome to come because there's a lot of events go on during pre-rodeo where kids can participate in the arena and do different things for their children.
Oh, that's great. Now, what does it cost to get in?
Tickets are $28 for each day, and it's $25 for 4 more.
Okay. And folks can get more information on the Facebook page?
Yes, or on Apple Hill Stables website.
Okay. Larry, that's what I had. Did we miss anything? Is there anything else you wanted to talk about?
Well, last year we were fortunate enough during the COVID period, it was an outdoor event. We had 3,300 spectators here for those 3 days, and 400 contestants and their families.
That's awesome.
And this year, the rumor has it we're going to blow those numbers out of the water, so we ought to be able to help the Shriners pretty well. And we got some terrific sponsors that have come out and help us each year, and new people who keep showing up, so they're helping us put this on, and it's just a community event, and that's what we're trying to give back to the community. Come out and share a good time and help a good cause.
Find more information on the Apple Hill Stables Facebook page and at applehillstablesllc.com. Next, it's hard to believe that Labor Day weekend is less than a week away because the summer has gone fast. Here's Sergeant Daniel Hansen of the Maine State Police and Maine Department of Highway Safety with some advice about staying safe on the roads. Sergeant Hansen, I would imagine that you have probably heard every excuse in the book, haven't you, when it comes to stopping people for speeding?
I will tell you that the craziest story that I ever got was I had a young lady that was obviously cruising right along, and I got her stopped. And, when I got up to her, I could tell that she was a little bit stirred up. She was a little bit emotional. There was something going on. And I asked her, I said, what's the reason for the speed this morning? Well, I'm going to be honest. I just got a call from a friend of mine, and her and another girl were using a Ouija board, and one of the girls had some kind of a feeling or an uncomfortable feeling, and she felt that her friend was possessed by whoever they were communicating with. And so she was rushing to give them aid, and she actually had a Ouija board in the back seat of her car. And I'm like,
wow.
Okay, that was unique.
Now, are there any excuses that you get where you say, okay, let me help you out? That seems like a valid excuse.
Yeah, there are some. So I had a father that was driving his daughter to the hospital. She was pregnant and she was in labor. And it was in those circumstances, tell them, no, you need to stay here. We're calling for an ambulance. Because if someone feels that they need to drive at excessive speed because of an emergency, they're creating more of a risk to the public and to themselves by their operation. I mean, they have no lights and siren. They're not properly trained to be operating at speeds like that. And when you're emotional, the last thing you should be doing is speeding, because your reactions are delayed because of your emotions and what's going on, and that's extremely dangerous. So we stop them. You can give them some grace in regards to the speeding issue because you understand it, but we can't have it continue. Thankfully, nothing bad happened. We call an ambulance. The ambulance comes and picks up the individual that needs to get to the hospital, and we make sure that they get there safe.
Yeah. I would imagine that's also true as far as reaction time. If you are speeding and something goes wrong, it's going to be worse because you're not going to be able to react fast enough because of how fast you're going. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Something that people don't realize is the faster you go, you're actually, the amount of space that you're taking up in that time is increasing. So, if you look at it for us, I mean, I'm into the numbers. I do reconstruction, and we play with numbers on a regular basis when it comes to things. If you're traveling at 50 miles an hour, your vehicle's traveling at 73.3 feet per second. So every second, your vehicle is covering that distance.
Wow.
So every 10 miles an hour that you go increased from there, it's an extra 14 feet per second that you continue to go. And then if you think about it, a person's reaction time on average is around 1.6 seconds.
Yeah.
So at 50 miles an hour, your vehicle is going to travel 117 feet before you can even touch the brake.
Wow.
It's going to take that long for that reaction to occur. And that's something that we see a lot of times when you think about it with a lot of the crashes that we have on the highway, where vehicles get rear-ended. It's because they've seen those brake lights come on, and when they perceive that hazard and they react to that hazard, they're taking up that distance, and there isn't enough distance left to stop. And therefore, they run into the back of the vehicle.
Which I would think points to another hazard, and that's distance between vehicles is going to be affected by the speed that you're traveling, right?
Yes, and I think we all see it on the highway that, people traditionally follow way too close, and they just don't realize. And it's one of those things I'm in a unique environment where I see this stuff all the time. A lot of people don't feel that it'll ever happen to me. Well, I meet all those people that it did happen to, and therefore I have that perspective of trying to explain to people this really can happen. If you continue to do this, if you continue to drive like this, these things are going to happen. And, when I stop a violator, I'll tell them, would you want to get into a crash right now going at that speed? I stop somebody doing 70 miles an hour in a 45-mile-an-hour zone, and I tell them, getting into a crash at 45 is bad enough. Do you really want to get into a crash at 70 miles an hour? That's adding so much more energy and force that you're going to have to absorb. Why would you want to do that?
Right. Wow. So back to people and their excuses. Why even bother if you're speeding? Just take the ticket.
It's one of those things. It's unique with human nature. We all want to have something to maybe put the pressure on to blame, whatever it may be. You always want to have something you can liken it to, and it's just human nature. I will tell you that I always tell people the best response is acceptance and the truth. I always tell people the truth will set you free. If you tell me the truth, and you just say, yep, you know what, I'm late for work and this is what I was doing and you got me, that honesty goes a long way with us. It really does, because it shows acceptance. And our responsibility with traffic enforcement is to ensure compliance with the law and voluntary compliance. That's the key. We want to gain voluntary compliance. And someone's acceptance of their violation or what they've done is telling us that, yeah, you got me, I'm sorry, this is what I've done. And I'm actually more apt to give warnings in those situations because that person is accepting it. They're telling me that they recognize, and they're probably less likely to continue with that violation, which is what we're trying to seek.
Yeah, I'm the person that's doing maybe a couple miles an hour over the speed limit, but people pass me, and sometimes I wonder, am I the little old lady that's driving along and people are passing me? But I drive, speed limit or a little above, but where I'm comfortable, and pulling up behind me and trying to get me to go faster isn't going to do any good. You can just go around me. I had someone behind me the other day flashing their lights at me. They must have had an emergency. And I finally just pulled over on this 2-lane road and let them go because that seemed the safest thing for me to do. It's amazing how some people just kind of try to pressure you to drive faster or get out of the way so that they can go by.
Yeah, we do see a lot of that. Aggressive driving habits are really bad. It's, in my opinion, from what I've seen over my 20-plus years, it's continuing to increase. And, people just are very focused on getting from point A to point B, and all that time in between is kind of wasted time for them. And they want to, get there as fast as they can, and so they do. They get out there and they push it on a regular basis. And they even push us. I cannot tell you how many times I'm traveling somewhere and someone comes up behind my cruiser and they're just committed. Like, this is their regular commuting route and they don't like me being in their way. And they'll come right up behind me as I'm cruising along at the speed limit, and they'll be right behind me trying to push me right along. And they'll actually pass my cruiser. I've stopped so many people for passing my cruiser, and I'm like, you get up to them in those circumstances, and I usually the first words out of my mouth are, what were you thinking? And they would just like, well, I'm running late for work. I'm like, that's not a good excuse to pass a state police cruiser. It really isn't.
Very true. Well, thank you very much for all the information this morning. We will endeavor to stay within the speed limit.
All right. Thank you. Be safe.
Remember, avoid distractions and watch your speed. Let's make it a safe holiday weekend. And finally today, we wanted to remind you of a valuable resource that's as easy as calling 211. Here's Nikki Busmanis to tell us more about 211 Maine. So we all know, obviously, what 911 is. What is 211 Maine?
Yeah, so 211 is a free, confidential program that helps people connect to needed resources in their area. So we help people find and connect to resources that help them stay healthy, safe, and independent. So this could be everything from heating assistance and mental health resources to food pantries, housing, veterans assistance, and more.
Wow. And it is a huge variety of services. I mean, you go in there, you can find almost anything.
Absolutely. So it's interesting, depending on who you're talking to, folks who might remember 411 when you could call for information about, hairdressers or mechanics. Sometimes we relate it to that type of work, but really around health and human services. So again, the services that help someone stay healthy, safe, and independent, that's what we connect them to.
Okay. And you mentioned confidential. That can be really important with things like the mental health services or recovery programs for substance use disorder.
Absolutely. So that's one of the really critical pieces of the program. It is completely anonymous and a confidential resource. And we do that because we want this to be as low barrier as possible. And we know that there's a lot of stigma out there around asking for help. And like you touched on, Cindy, about things like mental health or substance use related resources. So we try to make it as easy as possible for someone to be able to reach out for help and then receive a referral as local as possible. So for people who haven't used 211 before, our specialists will ask the individual for their zip code. We'll ask sometimes about insurance, ask maybe their veteran status, because that will help determine what the most appropriate referral is. But by and large, we really don't ask a lot of personal, identifiable questions of the person because we want it to be as seamless and confidential as possible.
And this is available all the time.
Mm-hmm. So in Maine 211, we are a 24/7 service. So whenever someone is ready to ask for help, whether for themselves or someone they know, all they have to do is dial 211, or they can even text with our specialist. So if you text your zip code to 898-211, you automatically connect to our same specialist here in Maine 24/7.
And you have a website too, correct?
Yes, if you go to 211maine.org, you can access our directory yourself. We always encourage people to either call or text with our specialists because it's the conversation that's really important. You know, some people know, I'm just looking for what food pantries are available in my area or what substance use treatment counselors are available. But for a lot of people with their needs, whether, again, if they're calling for themselves or on behalf of someone else, they're really not sure exactly what they're looking for. They just know they need help with something.
Right.
And that's why our specialists are trained to really figure out what they're really looking for.
And there's a huge amount of services available in the state. It's just a matter of accessing them and knowing what's in your area.
Absolutely. You know, a lot of people are looking for services and don't know exactly what it's called. They just know they need help.
Right.
So our directory is kind of like a yellow pages of services across the state. And so we have a team of resource coordinators whose sole job is to update these resources to make sure they're as accurate as possible.
It's also a great place to find volunteer opportunities, right?
Yeah, so we work really closely with the United Ways of Maine, as well as with the Maine Emergency Management Agency and the Maine Commission for Community Service to try to help people find what volunteer opportunities may be available to them.
Okay. I love that because I hear people so often say, I would love to volunteer, I just don't know what's out there.
Yeah, I will say the United Ways of Maine and the Maine Commission for Community Service do a great job of maintaining. If you go to volunteermaine.org, there's a great listing of statewide opportunities that our specialists would refer people to, or they would refer them to their local United Ways, who are typically the go-to organizations for volunteer opportunities.
Yeah. Nikki, that's what I had. Did we miss anything?
You know, 211 is an initiative of the United Ways of Maine, and we work in really close collaboration with the State of Maine DHHS and with the Opportunity Alliance as our contact center vendor. So it's really a great public-private partnership that puts people in Maine first.
Find more information at 211maine.org or by calling 211. I'm Cindy Campbell. Thanks again for joining us, and stay healthy.
Join us again next weekend for Maine Concerns with your Town Square Media News team.